There was a QNMR workshop on the last day. And ahead of that, the organizers of the workshop sent out like a QNMR challenge. I heard it was pretty tough, but I just thought it was kind of a cool thing, and also another example of how the community is really tight knit and fun loving.
The last couple of years have been a bit crazy, to say the least. The pandemic has affected so much in the world of chemistry. Scientists had to change the way they worked, and conferences moved online or paused altogether.
Fortunately, folks have been able to return to the lab and conferences have started again. But have things fully gone back to normal?
Hi, I'm Sarah.
I'm Jesse, and we're the hosts of The Analytical Wavelength, a podcast about chemistry and chemical data, brought to you by ACDLabs.
In today's episode, we caught up with our colleagues Mary McKee and Dimitris Argyropoulos, who attended the first in-person SMASH conference since 2019. SMASH is a meeting focused on small molecule NMR. They usually alternate their annual meetings between the United States and Europe.
This year's SMASH was held at the end of August in La Jolla, California. We wanted to know if the past couple of years had affected NMR research and the NMR community. Let's hear what Mary and Dimitris had to say. Hello, Mary and Dimitris, and thank you so much for joining us today on the pod. I want to start by asking our intro question that we ask to everybody, and that is, of course, what is your favorite chemical? And we'll start with you, Mary.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Mary McKee. I'm an account manager here at ACDLabs. I'm responsible for the relationship between our company and our commercial customers on the West Coast US. I've been here for just over 5.5 years. My favorite chemical is probably lithium aluminum hydride because it's a powerful reducing agent and it gets the job done when others cannot.
Yes, that definitely does get the job done. Now, Dimitris, you have told us your favorite chemical in the past. Is it still water?
Of course, it's still water. So water is, around us everywhere. We wouldn't have existed if there wasn't for water. Water controls everything that's running on this planet. Water also happens to be very important for NMR, which I am most interested in as, being the NMR business manager for ACDLabs.
This was the first in-person SMASH meeting since 2019. Dimitris, since you've gone to these meetings before, how did this one compare to previous years?
So yes, this was the first in-person SMASH meeting. However, it was not the first in-person meeting at all. It didn't have as many of the, uncertainties and questions that the meetings that took place earlier in the year had. So people more or less, knew what to expect. So how did it compare with past years? I would say that, SMASH stood up to its reputation. So it had fairly good attendance. So it had, as many people as one would have expected for a SMASH in the US to have. And as always, it had excellent science. Of course, there were measures in place to deal with the new circumstances. So we had an extremely large lecture hall and the tables and the chairs were very far apart. The organizers were handing over masks and sanitizing gel. And I believe that in the end, there was absolutely no problem.
That's really nice to hear. Mary, this was your first time attending SMASH, I believe. So how would you say that this compares with other conferences that you've been to?
Yeah, this was my first SMASH. I've attended probably about a dozen conferences since I joined ACDLabs, and I'd have to say this was one of my favorites. I really liked the close-knit community feel. I really liked that there were no concurrent talks, so everyone can attend all of the talks and walk away with the same shared experience. And I thought that was really cool.
Now, was this the first conference for many of the attendees? Because I know that people are just still getting back to in-person events. Of the people that you were talking to, Mary, what would you say? Was it most people's first conference?
I'd say it was a mix. I can't give you a perfect ratio, but it wasn't my first conference back in person, but there were quite a few people I talked to where it was their first. Luckily, everybody felt, as far as I could tell, pretty comfortable. The weather and the venue allowed for good outdoor options throughout, so I thought that was really good as well.
So, in your conversations with people at the conference, did you notice any themes of what small molecule NMR spectroscopists are excited about these days?
So, the first thing to say on this is that, people are still very excited about small molecules NMR. And this is, I believe, very important because in all the other big NMR meetings, small molecules, are a very small part. But it turns out that, there is a lot of interest in small molecules. And in the end, if you put things down, it turns out that the vast majority of people who are working with NMR are actually doing small molecules. It's just that, it's a technique that has been around for, I don't know, close to 70 years by now. And, not that many new things come out, as, for example, it happens with solids NMR or bio NMR. What people are interested more now, as we've seen, is that they are more looking into having automated ways of recording and interpreting the spectra. So they want to avoid spending too much time in person to do any type of analysis in the spectra, and instead have things done automatically. So we've seen quite a bit of interest in automated verification. We've seen there was a session even and quite a few posters about computer-assisted structure elucidation. And we've heard people praising the automatic tools that exist for assignment and analysis of spectra. So, small molecules NMR is very much alive. And now, it's the brighter days are still ahead of us.
Mary, do you have anything to add on that one?
So, I thought the overall theme, which is pretty common with SMASH as far as I understand it, is identifying opportunities for NMR to play a bigger or better role in pharmaceutical analysis. So, identifying different workflows where maybe, LCMS has been the hero for so long, but hey, maybe if we switch focus and look at NMR to attack the problem, we find that it offers a lot of really cool advantages. So I thought that was a great theme. And then I also noticed computational chemistry, machine learning, and QNMR were some of the major topics that stood out to me.
So, Dimitris, your point about interest in automated structure verification and things like that, is there anything that you think is driving this? Is this just a continued trend from before, or is there something particular you think that is driving more interest in that area?
I think what's happening is that people have slowly, come to understanding that they can have automated spectral analysis and it works. In the past, we've seen people being very hesitant in trusting anything else but themselves, but we see this changing. In fact, there was a very aptly titled session on Monday morning called Two Heads Are Better Than One, How Humans and Machines Learn NMR. So I believe that, people started to understand that computers can help them and they're not there to take their jobs. Instead, they're there to help them ensure that the results that they get are correct.
Okay, that's good to hear. Now, in terms of your personal conversations with the scientists that were there, did you get any sense of the current problems that they have that they might be looking to solve with data processing or management software? This is something I think I discussed with you a little bit, Mary.
Yeah. So, one of the main challenges I heard from a few different attendees was the capability to deploy complex high throughput and automated analysis systems using more, let's call it out of the box or customer configurable systems. I know that's something that ACDLabs is interested in. And so I thought it was pretty neat that that aligns with some of the things that we're working on today.
What about you, Dimitris? Did you have any conversations along these lines?
Yes, I did have, and I got exactly the same impression as Mary did, that people are interested in having means to help them with high throughput experiments. They NMR instruments have evolved quite a bit. They record spectra faster than ever. But, people can process in their head spectra at the same speed as they did 10 or 20 years ago. So they need help. And that's what we saw.
Yeah. And so kind of going back to Dimitris, you mentioned that the event itself had some changes from previous years in terms of precautions, given our current set of circumstances. But what would you say about the fields of NMR on a larger scale? Has the pandemic changed anything there?
That's a very broad question. I mean, the pandemic certainly changed the way people interact with instruments. So, before you used to have all these open access labs where people would just go in, put their sample, enter on the computer the details and leave. But of course, this meant that, they had to touch the same autosampler, touch the same keyboard, be in the same room with many people. So all these things have changed. And there was a learning curve in the first 6 to 8 months of the pandemic, but this has probably stabilized now. So it looks like the world of NMR has, let's say, sailed through the pandemic wave without too many problems. By now, I believe all the problems related to the pandemic have been sorted. So NMR is left with, let's say, its own set of problems, the biggest one currently being the problem of helium supply.
What about you, Mary? Did you notice anything maybe that scientists are interested in now that maybe they wouldn't have been before the pandemic with respect to NMR?
So certainly the capability to support their customers, their internal customers, which, are usually like med chemists or process chemists, being able to review and analyze data away from the lab, right? I think many of the scientists are still going into the office and were going into the office throughout the pandemic, but being able to support people, working more remotely and in a historically very on-site field, right, is something that was of interest to them. I think that was a big shift.
That makes sense. It sounds like the core of the field of NMR is still chugging along in many of the same ways. Dimitris, you didn't mention one session that stood out to you, the one about two heads are better than one. Can you expand on what you found interesting about that one, or were there any other sessions that stood out to you?
Yeah, so SMAS is an interesting conference in the sense of the format that they are following. So you have a Sunday where there is not much happening, if any. And so on this Sunday, we had the early career research presentations sponsored by one of the publishers. And then you have a full Monday, you have a half Tuesday, and then a full Wednesday. And it's probably a coincidence, but in the past 3 SMASes that I remember, always Monday was by far the most interesting day. And this SMAS Monday, we had the session on two heads are better than one. And we had nice presentations highlighting, how humans and machines interact. And and they were ranging from using artificial intelligence all the way to how to teach NMR and how to use computers for teaching NMR. And then there was a very nice session also about NMR and pharma, and this was titled NMR to the Rescue in Pharma and Industry. There we've heard some excellent presentations by people from Merck, from Pfizer, and from BMS. Quite interesting, for people who are not in pharma, just to see how things are happening in there, how things are working. Then on Tuesday was a half day, and things were a little bit, different in the sense that there was a session about guest host binding interactions. And then there was a nice session about NMR methods. And this is actually a session that is usually absent from any other conferences because people just focus on the results and they don't look at the methods. SMAS looked at the method, and we heard very nice presentations about improvements in pulse sequences and more selective methods. Then on Wednesday, there was a big session on metabolomics or omics in general, with, again, talks with people explaining how they are tackling the problems that they are facing. And there was a very interesting session also about QNMR. As Mary mentioned, QNMR is something very big these days. So a whole session dedicated to this with very nice presentations about what you need to be careful with and what to trust and what not to trust in QNMR. Finally, there was another session about the other very hot topic of the days, and that was benchtop NMR, where we heard presentations about people and how they use the benchtop instruments, nice small compact systems that don't require helium and nitrogen, to do all sorts of things.
I didn't know that those machines didn't require the helium and nitrogen. I'll look into that because I'm curious now. Mary, I don't believe that you had a chance to attend any of these sessions, did you?
Only very briefly. I knew my responsibility was to be in the booth, so that's where I spent the bulk of my time with my colleagues. It was actually really nice because we hadn't seen each other in person, so it was a great opportunity to do some bonding. But I did notice that in terms of like sessions that stood out, one thing that I really liked was there was a QNMR workshop on the last day. And ahead of that, so like maybe Sunday or Monday, the organizers of the workshop sent out like a QNMR challenge to everybody attending saying, hey, work through this example data, tell us what your results are and how you got there. And then the person who's closest to the true result would present at the workshop and tell people how they did it. I heard it was pretty tough, but I just thought it was kind of a cool thing. And also another example of how the community is really tight-knit and fun-loving.
Sounds like a great way to get people engaged at the conference, even though their workshop wasn't until the end. And it's actually kind of a nice segue into my final question for you both. What do you consider the highlight of the conference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the highlight of the conference, I'm not sure, I can pick a single moment to say that, yeah, this was the best part of the conference. I think the whole of the conference, was a highlight, and the fact that it took place in person. It had the same high-level science that we expected from a SMASH conference. And it was focused, on things that are cutting edge, but also that are applicable by everybody. So we didn't hear about, this strange technique that one person in one lab is only using and, gives some interesting results. Every single presentation we heard was about something that potentially all the attendees could benefit from and use it in their everyday life. So I believe in this respect, yeah, this was the highlight of SMASH, that even though now, I think this was actually the 25th year that SMASH was taking place, and SMASH has managed to maintain its relevance in the world of NMR conferences.
Excellent. Mary, what about for you? What was the highlight?
So I'd say probably, this is going to sound silly, but the welcome dinner was my favorite. It was the first time we all sat down together as a group and had a meal, which was something that happened throughout the conference. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, everybody sat down together outside in the courtyard. So the welcome dinner was probably my favorite. Really good food, but at the end, the entire group, the entire conference saying happy birthday to the conference president. And I thought that was just like really heartwarming and sweet.
That is adorable. That sounds like a lot of fun, and it makes it sound like it was a really fun, tight-knit community. Everything like that makes me very jealous. So very happy that you both had such a wonderful experience, and happy that you shared it with us today.
Thank you both so much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys.
It was great to catch up with Mary and Dimitris and to hear that the field of NMR is thriving as ever. It sounds like this conference was a smashing success.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us in this conversation. We'll leave you with this bonus section. Dimitris and Sarah had some thoughts about Mary's favorite chemical, lithium aluminum hydride.
Enjoy.
Are you revising your favorite chemical choice, Mary?
You don't like LAH?
No.
I mean, it does make a very messy crude. It is really hard to purify the reaction mixture.
I have to say, I flinched a little, Mary, when you said that, because only because when I was in grad school, someone else started a fire with
That's what's so great about it. It's dangerous. You know, it's messy,
is this still being recorded?
Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say, I hope this is still on being recorded. No, this is Mary's here for a good time, not a long time.
The Analytical Wavelength is brought to you by ACDLabs. We create software to help scientists make the most of their analytical data by predicting molecular properties and by organizing and analyzing their experimental results. To learn more, please visit us at www.acdlabs.com.